Signed, not sealed, not delivered, but hey, it's yours. The Iran War Memorandum of Understanding. The little we know and the blanks yet to be filled in. President Trump is an active stock trader while he's president. On average, 63 transactions per trading day, buying and selling companies with business before the federal government. We have the numbers and the dizzying implications. California Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom beats the Justice Department to the press release. Newsom posted a video today that said he and his wife are under federal investigation. Newsom's message, yes, I'm paraphrasing here. Come at me, bro. Hello, everyone. I'm Major Garrett in Washington. Welcome to the Takeout. Yes, it is great to be back. And my thanks to Nicole Killian, Nancy Cordes, Ned O'Keefe for filling in while I enjoyed some R&R in, where else? Southern California. When last I was here, negotiations spun in tight circles around a memorandum of understanding between the U.S. and Iran to extend the ceasefire and reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Now, there is a framework of an understanding in memo form that has been signed. The spinning now is about what it means and who gets what when. Details, non-existent. Nothing on paper to evaluate. All we have is what is being said. So, cue President Trump after arriving in France for the G7 summit.
The deal's all signed, and the strait is already partially opened. As you know, they're doing a little hunting for a couple of mines that they've already found. But it's essentially ships are starting to go out now. On Friday, it'll be completely opened.
That is not the consensus opinion, even within the Trump administration. Vice President Vance said today that it may take 2 weeks for tanker traffic to return to pre-war norms. Global energy markets did not seem to fret over these logistical details. Oil prices slid to near pre-war levels, but it may take a month or possibly longer for you to notice any real difference at the gas pump. Remember, gas prices take the elevator up and the stairs back down. Speaking of back down, who did? No one knows. No text of the framework is available. Typically, when something of this magnitude is signed, it's ready for publication. Not this time. So, when?
I want it to be released because it's a very powerful document. It's not like the Obama document, which was just a terrible document. This is a very powerful document, and I want it to be released. So, probably pretty soon. I would say sometime after Friday.
After Friday? Why wait so long? Is it still being worked on? Who understands what's been agreed to? My colleague, Ed O'Keefe, put a key question to Vice President Vance on CBS Mornings about Iran's contention it is set to receive billions.
They say they're going to get $24 billion in frozen funds if they hit certain benchmarks. Is that true?
Well, again, Ed, we're open to a lot of things that are on the table, but that $24 billion just doesn't appear anywhere in any of the texts that we've talked about with the Iranians. What we have said is that we're willing to talk about unfreezing assets, but a much, much bigger deal is unsanctioning their economy so long as they make the long-term commitments on the nuclear program.
Sounds like some money is going to change hands, and top administration officials said today that some funds could be unfrozen for Iran soon as a quote-unquote small gesture. How does all of this look to former President Obama? Like something he's seen before, up close.
It is doubtful that any agreement that arises is going to be significantly different or a significant improvement from the deal that we had in the first place, and had worked for a long stretch of time before the United States pulled out of it. So I'm hopeful that bombing stops and ordinary people are no longer suffering as a consequence of the war.
With more on where things stand and the many loose ends still dangling over the deal that, again, isn't a deal, but a framework of an understanding, we turn to Nancy Cordes, covering the G7 summit. Nancy, lots of conversation about what is or isn't in it. Help us try to understand what we know.
Well, Major, here's what both the Americans and the Iranians say is in the deal, starting with an end to hostilities between the U.S. and Iran, an end to the Strait of Hormuz being bottled up, an end to the U.S. blockade on all commercial vessels trying to go to or from Iranian ports. Everyone agrees that this is part of the framework. But that's where things start to diverge. You've got the Iranians saying that there are all kinds of financial incentives that they get right off the bat. Sanctions being lifted, Iranian funds being unfrozen, access to this $300 billion rebuilding fund. And U.S. officials are saying, wait, not so fast. Yes, maybe we'll release a little bit of that money up front. But in general, the Iranians are going to have to put skin in the game. They're going to have to sit down for serious, technical, nuclear negotiations starting on Friday for 60 days and really show that they are willing to make serious concessions when it comes to their nuclear program before they can gain access to these funds. Now, all of this would be really easy to clear up if we could see the memorandum of understanding, but we don't have access to it yet. We haven't seen the text. President Trump, as you noted, said perhaps we'll see it sometime after Friday. U.S. officials told us today, actually, we could get a look at it sooner than that, maybe in the next 24 to 48 hours.
You're at a summit, which means there are probably those leading other countries who have some manner of reaction to what we know thus far. What is it?
Why, yes, they do, Major. And even though the president is meeting at this G7 summit with a whole bunch of leaders who did not agree with his decision to start this war, who did not agree with the strategy behind it, they are now celebrating. They are hailing this as a diplomatic breakthrough. French President Emmanuel Macron described this today as a path to peace because they are all elated that the Strait of Hormuz looks like it is about to be reopened. Their economies were hard hit. The growth slowed in these countries. Fuel prices skyrocketed. So anything at this point that gets the Strait of Hormuz reopened is fine by them. And not just when it comes to the economies of their countries, but here in Geneva in particular, Major, which is home to so many international organizations, they are celebrating as well. I spoke today to the president of the International Red Cross about what this development might mean for them. Once the strait is reopened, what's your expectation about how long it will take for the cost of fertilizer to go back down, the cost of food to go back down?
I hope we will see an improvement due to a decline in fuel prices. This will be the first impact that we hope to see. And then we also hope to see a removal of the delays in supply chains because we have been able to pre-position goods in many parts, especially pharmaceuticals that we need, because part of our assistance goes to the health systems.
She says the longer that the strait remained closed, the more expensive it became for the Red Cross and other organizations to do their jobs helping people around the world. Major.
Nancy Cordes, great stuff as always. I appreciate it. Aaron David Miller joins me now. He is a senior fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace and a friend of the program. Aaron David Miller, always good to have you. Give me your 30,000-foot evaluation of what this is, what it might mean, and what we still need to figure out.
I'd only ask one question. Having been around negotiations most of my professional life, where's the text?
Right.
And frankly, there's a reason the text is not being released, and that is because I think they don't want, understandably perhaps, but inevitably, everyone taking shots at it. We're not going to learn a hell of a lot more, Major, once this 1 or 2 page document is going to be revealed, because every substantive issue, from what to do about the HEU, highly enriched uranium, what to do about a moratorium on enrichment, what to do about sanctions relief, what about unfreezing frozen assets, what about mutual security guarantees, what's the schedule for opening up the straits and opening not under Iranian management, which is going to be a problem, and easing the naval blockade, not to mention the other kicker, which we've watched play out over the last several days, and that is the Israeli-Hezbollah conflict that could prove to be I don't want to say a spoiler, but it's going to have to be managed.
It's going to have to be managed, and it appears it is created, maybe at the margins, but a marginal rift is still a rift between President Trump and the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Could it be, Aaron David Miller, that on the other side of this conflict, there could be something that didn't exist before, which is a divergence in U.S. and Israeli interests in the region?
Fascinating question. I think that U.S. and Israeli interests on Iran diverged midway through this war, when it became clear in the mind of the Trump administration whatever pretensions or aspirations they had for regime change was not going to take place. I mean, you have the president now describing the Iranian negotiators as pragmatic. Netanyahu, there is no good deal that Netanyahu could accept. And frankly, the one that we're going to cut is going to constitute, I suspect, a strategic defeat for Israel. And if we're not careful, if this is a sort of one and done like Gaza, where you get the hostages out, the war stops, but all the other hard issues are punted, and somehow, because the straits are open, the blockade is removed and the war's over, quote unquote, things just sort of fade away. But yeah, I think you've never, look, I worked for administrations from Carter to Bush 43, and you could throw in Obama and Biden. No American president has ever talked about an Israeli prime minister the way Donald Trump has talked about Netanyahu. No American president has ever threatened an Israeli prime minister at times the way Donald Trump has. So Trump's got maximum leverage because Netanyahu is running for election. That is the most important event in his life in 2026. He needs Donald Trump to set up campaign headquarters, reelect Benjamin Netanyahu in Washington. He can't elect Netanyahu, but if he doesn't campaign aggressively, Netanyahu's vulnerabilities are just going to expand exponentially.
Aaron David Miller, I have read some assessments today that this idea of a Gulf fund of some kind, a reconstruction fund, is indicative that many in the region perceive Iran as having absorbed the hardest blows from Israel and the U.S., regime still standing, and this fund could be a way for them to regain some connectivity to the Iranian regime in a way to maybe pacify them in the future. How do you see it?
I mean, maybe I think that's critically important. I mean, the Gulf states are all going to figure out a way. The Qataris and the Omanis are already well on their way to some sort of détente with the Iranians. If reports that Reuters is reporting that the Emiratis have transferred billions of dollars, $3 billion I heard, can't be confirmed. Even the Emiratis, as close as they are to the Israelis, because the Israelis deployed Iron Dome during the heat of this conflict to help defend them against Iranian drones and missiles. Saudis will basically sort of hedge. The problem, I think, for the Gulf states, Major, is that the whole Dubai model, that is to say, let's turn the Gulf states into a financial, AI, high-tech, sports, cultural, economic entrepot. It all depends on security and stability. And I think the Iranians have demonstrated they've weaponized geography, Major. Literally, horizontal escalation. They don't have to strike Israel with missiles. They got the Gulf states in their sights, and now they have their fingerprints all over the Straits of Hormuz.
Important perspective, as always. Aaron David Miller, I appreciate your time. Thank you very, very much. CBS News national security analyst Aaron McClain joins me now. He also hosts the Most Excellent School of War podcast. All right, that's one man's opinion. What is yours? Give me your takeaway, 30,000 foot.
Isn't it astonishing, Major, that the United States of America has a secret deal with Iran? Now, they could release the MOU tonight, tomorrow, and then it won't be secret anymore, but that is the position of the administration. It's a great deal.
That is the current reality. Yeah. A secret deal cut with the Iranian regime, which only weeks ago was described as lunatic nuclear maniacs.
Well, they're pragmatists now. Never mind, however, that the administration keeps saying that the Iranians are misrepresenting the contents of the deal in the Iranian press, which, if you believe the Iranian press, the deal is all upside for Iran, all downside for the United States, to which I say, well, why not release the deal? I stand with you,
Prove them
Major.
wrong.
Let's see the text, but I suspect that Aaron David Miller is exactly right. There are good reasons why they don't want to release the deal, because they don't want their critics to see what's in it.
Do you think, as Aaron David Miller suggested, that what we will see isn't the actual text? It's going to be a summary, a bullet point assessment of what underlying still has to be negotiated?
That's one possibility. Another possibility is we'll see the core text of the MOU, but there may be side deals. This is a feature of the Obama-era JCPOA, where you will recall one of the controversies about which Republicans were very fired up, arguably rightly so, was elements of secret diplomacy going on between the Obama administration and Iran, secret annexes to the deal. We don't know that that's going to be the case here, but we also don't have text of the deal.
That's going to be a key word. Are there annexes? Are there things yet to be determined that are subject to negotiations but create for themselves their own back channel realities?
Yeah, that's right. And all we really seem to know now, just because of the confluence of reports from Americans and Iranians, is that the deal seems to involve the Iranians opening their blockade of the Strait of Hormuz and us lifting our blockade of Iranian ports. But you don't even know the details about that. It seems very likely that the Iranians are going to assert some level of sovereignty over the strait, maybe even have ships register, maybe even in time have them pay quote-unquote registration fees. Major, that would be an enormous strategic defeat for the United States.
And it's worth reminding our audience that the strait was not closed when this all began. So the big achievement is to go to where things were before February 28th.
That's right. Look, the best case scenario is there's a kind of clean trade of blockade for Iranian strait opening, and then we get to the work of negotiating the nuclear stuff, which in a way takes us back to where we were supposed to be on April the 7th, where you'll recall the president declared a ceasefire in return for the strait being opened. It wasn't open. But that's the best case scenario. The worst case scenario is the United States of America essentially pays extortion to the Iranians to open the strait, but then manage the strait, and releases its leverage over Iran by lifting our own blockade, and then enters negotiations over the nuclear deal with that diminished leverage. That's not a pretty picture.
No, and it's very much like the harsh criticism that Trump has for years inveighed against the Iran nuclear deal negotiated by President Obama. Basically paying ransom to Iran for something that they could have achieved through other means.
Now, look, I mean, the vice president said on CBS Mornings today that this deal, and he was referring...
is actions-based.
That's right. It's actions-based. And he also said, in the grammar of his answer with regard to the MOU, it will end Iranian pursuit of a nuclear weapon. Great. That would be a good outcome. Let's see the text of the deal.
Let's see the text of the deal, because we all know Iran is someone, as a nation rather, that has, if I understand correctly, if I'm wrong, said under the Non-Proliferation Treaty it won't pursue a nuclear weapon.
Many times.
But has lied about that consistently. So if that's all they're putting on the table, that would be something we would file under seen before.
That's right. That's absolutely right. They've said it many, many times. They won't pursue a nuclear weapon. It's actions that matter.
Aaron McLean, great stuff as always. I appreciate it. The Senate is expected to hold a confirmation hearing for Jay Clayton. That is President Trump's newest pick to be Director of National Intelligence. That hearing scheduled for possibly as early as Wednesday. Virginia Democratic Senator Mark Warner told Face the Nation yesterday that he is confident Clayton can and will be confirmed. And Warner wants to make sure that Trump's acting pick, that's the name you've heard, Bill Pulte, doesn't serve even one day in the position. Listen.
I would hope that the president would then say to Tulsi Gabbard, who was going to stay till the end of the month, stay at least until Clayton is confirmed, or allow the number 2 to stay.
Nicole Killian has the latest from Capitol Hill. If I could summarize, Senator Warner, would be anyone but Pulte can be in this position, just not him.
Yeah, I mean, that's basically Democrats' position overall, and it's why FISA, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, lapsed last week because Democrats largely opposed it in the House, even just a short-term extension. And, of course, there was a Democratic senator who objected when they tried to bring it up in the Senate under a process called unanimous consent. So that really is the posture here. That being said, we saw the president try to diffuse this somewhat by naming Jay Clayton permanently to the role. Of course, he still has to go through a Senate confirmation process, which is being fast-tracked here on Capitol Hill. His confirmation hearing is this coming Wednesday. He was just announced less than a week ago. So the Senate moving very quickly here. And just today, Majority Leader John Thune said that he would try to expedite that confirmation if he can get cooperation, namely among Democrats. So it's even possible, potentially, we could see this nomination voted out of committee, maybe even head to the floor if things go according to Republicans' plan. But we'll see how Clayton does in his confirmation hearing first. But yes, to your point, Democrats have made clear they won't support the reauthorization of FISA until Bill Pulte is out of that position. Now, he is supposed to take over for Tulsi Gabbard this coming Friday, and so that is why you're seeing the Senate move expeditiously to try to install Clayton before then, if possible. But the president was kind of critical about that on Truth Social, suggesting Republicans are moving too fast, even though this is someone that he has named to the post.
There was also news this weekend, Nicole, about Senator Mitch McConnell being admitted to the hospital. What do we know?
Well, we don't know much. And, you know, we have asked a number of senators about McConnell's condition. Of course, Senator McConnell's office said that he was hospitalized over the weekend and is receiving excellent care. But beyond that, we don't know why he was hospitalized, where he is hospitalized, or what his prognosis may be. Now, I did ask Majority Leader John Thune if he is concerned about this and if he expects McConnell back anytime soon. He said he is hopeful that Senator McConnell can return as soon as this week. But even talking to other Republican senators, many of them say that they have reached out to McConnell's staff, but just simply don't know a lot about his condition. Of course, we know that McConnell has suffered a number of health challenges in recent years. He's had several falls. You may recall about 2 or 3 years ago, he had a few freezing incidents where he wasn't able to speak right away. But nonetheless, he has stayed on the job. He did announce his retirement last year, saying that he wouldn't seek an 8th term, but he has been presiding over an appropriations subcommittee. You know, he has been here around the Hill. He just voted last week. So everyone certainly wishing him a speedy recovery, Major.
And we'll keep an eye on it. Nicole Killian, thank you so much. 3,600 financial trades in just 3 months. CBS News sifts, inspects, and tabulates Trump's investments. Plus, California Gavin Newsom, who confirmed today that he is eyeing a presidential run in 2028, says he and his wife are now under federal investigation, and the governor appears to relish that. It did not rain on President Trump's UFC South Lawn birthday shebang. It was a sight to behold, with corporate logos, celebrities, and CEOs. Oh yes, and a slur. We dip hesitantly into the octagon. The Takeout returns in 90 seconds. Welcome back to The Takeout. Welcome to the Conversation Corner. CBS News investigation shows President Trump has traded stocks at a level never before seen in the American presidency. In the first 3 months of this year, Trump's investment accounts traded 3,600 stocks worth hundreds of millions of dollars. The Trump Organization said Trump's portfolio is overseen by independent investment managers. CBS News investigative reporter Michael Kaplan has been following all this for us. Michael, it's great to have you here.
Great to be here.
What do we know?
Well, this is a financial disclosure that came out last month, and it was really remarkable because you saw 3,600 plus individual trades, most of them of individual companies. And the sheer volume of this is what's extraordinary. I mean, the portfolio leaned heavily into tech stocks and the major technology giants. You had Apple and Amazon and Microsoft and Oracle as some of the most bought and sold securities. But this is sort of unprecedented in the sense we're talking about individual companies instead of index funds or sort of larger pool
and
trades.
many of the companies you just named, Check, have active interests before the federal government, point one. Point two, the president knows better than anyone, any utterance from him can affect the stock of one of these companies. Point three, this president, more than his predecessors, has been open to the federal government negotiating share arrangements, purchasing some portion of privately held companies, all of which have implications for this portfolio.
Yeah, and I just want to stipulate at the top, the Trump organization, which manages these funds, told us in a statement that the president, his family, doesn't have any
direct
visibility into what's being traded. This is all being handled by third-party investment managers. But some of the timing of these trades is interesting. Take, for example, NVIDIA, the chip maker. The first week of January, he traded up to $1 million worth of NVIDIA stock. And the next week, the administration loosened export controls around export controls around these chips to China. So now NVIDIA has an easier time selling its prized AI chips to China. The president bought hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of Palantir, touted Palantir by its ticker name on his Truth Social account after that. And Eli Lilly bought hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of Eli Lilly, and the administration has been making it easier to buy GLP-1s and policies that benefit
historically, presidents have had blind trust where they are so far removed from it and the actions of the federal government as to be completely unaware. This is closer. I'm not saying it's illegal. I'm just saying it is closer than we've ever seen before.
Yeah, and again, the Trump organization says the president has no visibility into this. And what's actually interesting is the president is exempt from some of these conflict of interest laws that other federal officials have to abide by when it comes to policy decisions around their finances and that may benefit their finances. So there is some degree of trust with the public here that the administration and the president is saying, take our word for it, that he's not involved in these trades.
And yet, anyone sitting at the top of the federal government is uniquely positioned to know things that no one else can know. And that creates the appearance of doubt.
Well, and just looking at these 3,600 trades, we talked to a bunch of seasoned money managers who were sort of confused about why so many trades. Right. One of the strategies that was thrown out there was a tax mitigation strategy, essentially reducing the president's tax bill in the long term. But I just want to underscore that it's the trading of these individual companies that's sort of unique, that's new, that's different. And I worked with a great team. If you go on CBSNews.com, you'll be able to see this interactive feature where you can click on the individual stocks and see the purchases and the sales over the course of
what
3
the kids
months.
call a dashboard. It's all right there. You can find it right there because of the excellent work of Michael Kaplan and his team. Thank you very, very much.
Thanks, Major.
Great to have you here. Still ahead, shakeup in the Alaska Senate race. Why one of the two Dan Sullivans no longer going to be on the ballot. You're watching The Takeout. Welcome back to The Takeout. Same conversation corner, just different chair. California Governor Gavin Newsom, he's a Democrat, said the Justice Department, the Trump Justice Department, is now investigating him. Newsom said there's no crime. Times being what they are, he did release a social media video. Here's an excerpt.
Donald Trump isn't just coming after me because of my mean tweets. He's coming after me because I'm considering running for president. Because he hates that I've consistently called him out over and over again for his lies and deceit. Donald Trump is simply the most corrupt president in American history.
CBS News investigative correspondent Julie Watts joins me now with more. What do we know, if anything, about this investigation, Julie?
Well, we don't know a whole lot yet, Major. We reached out, obviously, to the governor's office, who just referred us back to that video, which, interestingly, you called it a social media video, but it sure does look like a press conference, doesn't it? Looks very official. What we know is that sources telling CBS News that right now it looks like there are 2 investigations, one into Jennifer Newsom's taxes. That, of course, is his wife. And there have long been sort of discussions, public discussions, and reporting on how some of Newsom's biggest donors, corporate entities like PG&E, are donors to her nonprofits. That's not uncommon in California politics. A lot of spouses of politicians have nonprofits that are funded by these types of sort of supporters, political supporters. And then the other investigation, we're told, it has to do with Dana Williamson, or some connection to Dana Williamson. That is the governor's former chief of staff, who just pled guilty to federal charges related to conspiring to steal money, or funnel funds, I shouldn't say steal money, but funnel funds from former HHS Secretary Javier Becerra's dormant campaign fund. And both she and his then chief of staff were charged federally. Both have pled guilty to different charges related to that. We are told, though, that initially, talking both with folks who are familiar with that investigation early on, that initially, the DOJ was reaching out to Williamson, sort of looking into Newsom, and he even said publicly, or several people have said publicly, that because they couldn't find anything on Newsom, they then turned on Dana Williamson, his chief of staff, and Javier Becerra's chief of staff. Javier Becerra was not indicted on any of those charges. He, of course, is the front runner right now for California governor to replace Governor Newsom.
And Julie, you mentioned the look of that video. It was 5 minutes long, and the governor said something he has been coy about previously, like he would think about or look into. He basically said, I'm considering running for president. To my ear, correct me if I'm wrong, that's the most definitive he's been.
I think that is probably the most definitive he has been. I mean, it's really difficult, right? California media, we all know he's running. We've all known for a long time. So you sort of hear everything through a certain filter. I will say one of my favorite print reporters, Emily Hoven, she is at the Chronicle now, formerly at Cal Matters. She tweeted that and said, well, I guess it's official. He's running. So certainly a lot of folks in the California sort of journalism sphere feel like this was his official announcement.
And very quickly, Julie, he wants the Justice Department to come after him because he wants to continue to portray himself as a fighter against what Trump represents politically and judicially.
I can't speak for the governor, but were I advising him, I would certainly say it is good for him to have Trump attacking him. He wants his name coming out of Trump's mouth as much as possible. It's great for a presidential run.
Julie Watts, appreciate the time. Thank you. Ted Cruz, Republican senator from Texas, breaking with President Trump by issuing endorsements in Georgia and South Carolina. Our political panel will discuss that and a whole lot more when we come back. This is The Takeout. Welcome back. Political panel time. Let me introduce them to you. Democratic strategist Jim Kessler, Republican strategist Mark Bednar. All right, let's file this under Who Asked You? Ted Cruz, senator from Texas, endorsed at the weekend in South Carolina, Alan Wilson, the attorney general in the governor's race, and Rick Jackson running for Georgia governor, neither of which was endorsed by President Trump. What is Ted Cruz up to?
Well, so he's always kind of done this. So we built our House majority, its current form right now, over the course of several cycles. And many steps of the way, Ted Cruz would endorse against us, and we'd beat him, and we're like, why are you getting involved? Right here, this seems to be, especially in Georgia, where both Brian Kemp and President Trump, who don't always agree on a lot, they've teamed up together to support Burt Jones. The fact that Cruz is going the other way, the only thing that this tells me is he's trying to stand out kind of in a longer term. Obviously, this is a gamble. It's very, who knows if it's going to work, but this is clearly an attempt to go against the grain to try to do a kind of a political audience that he doesn't have right now.
And Jim, this is just product differentiation. You've got to do that. You've got to be something different if you're Ted Cruz.
Yeah, look, he's obviously interested in running in 2028.
No doubt.
And the only way, he's a long shot.
Very much so.
The only way he wins is if it's a change election within the Republican Party.
Right.
And you're going to have Vance and Rubio who are going to be like, stay the course in some sort of way. And so he's making some long shot bets. he's a calculating guy. I'm not saying that in a negative sort of way. I'm just saying like
everyone calculates.
He calculates. So I think he's just putting his chips in places where, like, maybe it pays off. I wouldn't bet on the guy, but that's what he's doing.
Alaska Senate race had an interesting development today. There were two Dan Sullivans momentarily on the ballot, not any longer, because the Alaska Division of Elections today decided to remove Republican Senator candidate Daniel J. Sullivan from the ballot because he, according to the Division of Elections, did not declare an actual good faith candidacy, but was instead filed with a purpose to confuse or mislead and thereby compromise the ballot's fairness or neutrality. So the real Dan Sullivan, the senator, the incumbent, on the ballot by himself.
Right, and obviously the other Dan Sullivan, he has the opportunity to appeal this decision. Right. So we're going to have to see where that goes. But Dan Sullivan,
some low-level suggestion he was a stalking horse for Democrats to muddy the waters.
Right, and Senator Sullivan said as much as well. Obviously, this is going to be a top-tier race for both parties going into this cycle. The fact that now this sort of dust-up has now cleared, this is helpful to the senator from Alaska, the real Dan Sullivan. I guess I don't even know how to say it, but this is a good development for him. This means that he can, focus his attention on the Democrats, and we can perhaps deploy our resources.
And Jim, I guess from your perspective, the only thing that matters is Alaska's in play.
Alaska is in play, and Mary Peltola is a good candidate. She's won statewide before. It is a very bad environment for Republicans right now. She is running on very, very local issues there. It's an interesting race. And their mantra is she only cares about Alaska. She only cares about Alaska. And Senator Sullivan is wrapped up in the Washington, D.C. fights and the Trump fights. And, that's how they're waging this race. And it's pretty smart.
So last night at the White House, you folks might have heard something about this. There was a very large UFC event. I didn't watch it. I watched World Cup and Stanley Cup finals. My parent company had it on streaming. I will probably get a letter in triplicate in my file for not watching it. And if I do get that letter, I promise I will read every word out loud on this program. And it went really well. I mean, by all accounts, I didn't watch it, but I read the fights were great, huge attendance, lots of people watching from the outside. But Josh Hokett, I don't know if that's the proper pronunciation, said after winning, lastly, Michelle Obama is a man. Am I right, America? Today, Dana White told Time magazine, everyone knows my position on free speech, but I hate that kind of nonsense. Very much a downbeat note on what was supposed to be a big celebration for 250 America and President Trump on his 80th birthday.
Well, yeah, Major, you're kind of proving the point. We're not even exactly sure how to pronounce this guy's name. Right. And the mere fact that, that overshadowed what was a spectacular performance, great event, great job by everybody involved. That's super unfortunate, and the fact that that's part of the conversation right now.
Totally unnecessary.
Totally repugnant, completely unnecessary, and overshadowing a great event that the president put on.
Jim, you get the last word.
What do you expect? And this is similar to the Dan Sullivan thing, and I don't think Democrats put him up to it. People are trying to do things to get viral and be known and draw attention to themselves, and this happened in the White House.
Jim Kessler, Mark Bednar, appreciate the time. Thanks so much. Coming up, America 250, I just mentioned it. Well, the celebrations are beginning to kick themselves off ahead of the big anniversary. When we come back, I'll speak with the authors of a new book, Divided Over the Declaration, How an Enduring Debate Sustains the Vision of America. That's next, right here on The Takeout. Welcome back. As America prepares to celebrate its 250th anniversary, a new book takes a look back at how we got here, the foundation the Founding Fathers laid for generations to come. It's titled, Divided Over the Declaration, How an Enduring Debate Sustains the Vision of America. Earlier, I spoke to authors Tony Williams and David Bobb. The book is called Divided Over the Declaration. We'll get to the book in a second, but I think there's a more important initial conversation we need to have, David and Tony. America 250 creates a kind of vague sense of apprehension, it seems to me. I feel it in my audience. People don't know how they should feel, or if they can celebrate this in a way that doesn't feel somehow either politicized, pro-Trumpian or anti-Trumpian, and just pro-American. Do you sense that?
Very much so. I think, Major, what we've seen, let's just start with the classroom, an area that Tony and I know well from our work at the Bill of Rights Institute.
Right.
Teachers want to be able to challenge students to think through all of this. They call it inquiry. You ask good questions, right? You push. And what they feel like oftentimes is their ability to get students to disagree has really fallen off. So young people look at this big national debate that we're supposed to be having, robust, generative, right, catalytic. They don't see it. What they see is adults sparring at each other and then losing their friendships. I remember, growing up where I could joke with a neighbor and say, hey, our votes are going to cancel each other on election day, but we can still.
But that's okay.
That's okay, right? And that kind of thing is what I think we're losing when we kind of walk on eggshells.
Tony, this walking on eggshells concept, it's become, I think, as important as the sort of cliche, oh, we're a divided country. Look, I think a divided country can function. An eggshell country has a hard time functioning when its origin story is of confidence and courage.
Right, and that's what I think is missing today, is that we have a real sense of division, but that's why we wrote the book, right? We were divided over the Declaration and the question of independence, and so it's not surprising that we have been divided over the past 250 years. We fought a civil war, and there's a sense of division now, but I think if we anchor ourselves in the unity of the Declaration and think about self-government, I mean, after all, democracy is based upon deliberation and debate and persuasion and coming together and compromising and talking to each other, listening to each other. And that's what we need to get back to.
And what were the fundamental disagreements or divisions about the Declaration, David?
Right from the get-go, whether or not we should separate from the crown, right? This is a big deal. It takes a long time for Americans to come around to becoming.
The shorthand of it is we all agreed to get rid of the crown. That's not true.
No, there was a lot of disagreement because it was a consanguinity, right? That's the word the Declaration used. We're of similar blood. America's a home, but we're also an idea. We're even more an argument. And so I think what the colonists started to realize is we have to start expressing what it is that is in the American mind. And they came to realize this was in a kind of crucible moment, I think. Imagine you're Jefferson, right? You got a deadline, you got 17 days to write the thing, and you write, who are we? He wrote a word down. We didn't know what that word was until 2010. He wrote a word over it that was citizens. In 2010, the Library of Congress scraped back the layers of ink, subjects. We moved from being subjects to citizens.
And Tony, that may be among the most important transitions in human history.
Indeed, and to assert that we have natural rights that government cannot violate, and that all men are created equal, and that we have certain liberties. And the purpose of government is by the consent of the people to protect their rights. That is the purpose of government. It's
not to deliver benefits, but to protect rights.
That's right. That is the core American creed, and how policy and laws and all that have evolved over the 250 years. That's the story of our book, right? Because, and the Declaration has always been at the very core of all of those debates.
And I love how the book goes through the process, because there is another shorthand. Jefferson sat by himself, racked by migraines, and came up with this beautiful set of words that had never been seen before. As you make it very clear, they've been seen all over the place. It was a derivative distillation of what a lot of other people had put down on paper, had said out loud. And the most important thing Jefferson did was to put it all in one place, in one set of phrases that have stood the test of time.
He's the draftsman. He didn't like any of the edits, by the way. He thought he had written a pretty perfect
thing.
No one
does.
No one wants to be edited, right? So when those come in, they're about the grievances, they didn't tweak much of the preamble, right? The thing that Tony just quoted. That was in the air. Whether you were hoisting a pint or listening to a sermon, you were hearing these things about natural rights. And that was a big change. When we have rights by blood, that's one thing. When you have rights by your existence as a human being, that's another thing. And so what happened is this kind of change, and that set off a sequence of events that were really profound. People understood immediately, this is a revolution in the way that we think about rights. Enslaved people, for example, could claim their rights. It set people thinking about America in a new and different way. Abigail Adams, for example, says, hey, John, you're going to be doing this new thing. Could you please remember the ladies?
Or else.
Or else. That's right.
She said, she warned him in a gentle spouse-to-spouse sort of way, but underscoring, look, that we have revolutionary ideas of our own, and be leery of us, or we may come at you. You can listen to my full interview with Tony Williams and David Bobb on your favorite podcast platform. Happy Monday, everyone. This is The Takeout. Relentlessly curious, reliably civil, occasionally clever. The Daily Report is next.